I am going to look after my flock myself and keep it all in view. As for you, my sheep, I will judge between sheep and sheep. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, escorted by the angels, he will take his seat on his throne of glory, and all nations will be assembled before him, and he will separate men one from another as the shepherd separates sheep from goats. Otito dịrị Jesu. Solemnity of Christ the King. Dinwenai Jesu Christi ezo wanine. Our Lord Jesus Christ, universal King. This is a very solemn feast, a very glorious one. But it is also a feast that should fill us with awe, some sort of fear and trembling, especially if we look at our own lives and we look at the way things are in the world. It is a feast that consoles, gives us reassurance. But it is also a feast that reminds us that we cannot escape the watch and judgment of God. We know that because of the rains, the Nigerian bishops long ago combined a part of the feast of the body and blood of Christ, Corpus Christi, combined it with this feast of Christ the King, and that is the Eucharistic procession. This afternoon, if the rains permit, we will carry the Blessed Sacrament in procession in various parishes throughout Nigeria to remind everybody that Jesus is King, but also to draw our attention to why, how Jesus is King. Yes, he is King of the universe. Pope Pius XI, who established this feast in 1925, saw how things were in the world. Dictators who thought they were gods were rising in many parts of Europe. And the Pope felt it necessary to remind all of them and all of us that there is only one King of the universe, God himself. And that God, King of the universe, has made himself manifest or visible in his Son, Jesus Christ. Onye na-emekwe ya mara amara na onwego onye n'ime anyị ọ bụ ya nwe ụwa ọkwa ọchịchị ọbụla iji n'ụwa bụ nnete bi na-enete n'ihe Chukwu. Any position of power and authority on this earth is only a position of representation, not substitution. You are representing the only true King and acting in his name. But they didn't listen to him. Neither Hitler nor Mussolini. Hitler in Germany, Mussolini in Italy, and even Stalin. They didn't listen to him. And the world paid grievously for this failure to listen to the voice of reason. Men who thought they were God or gods, human beings who had no reference to any other power above them. Well, they were not the first in history. Dictators throughout the world, past and present, always believe that they are gods. If you remember the passage in the Bible, in the gospel that we heard a few Sundays ago about paying tribute to Caesar, Jesus asked them to show him the coin. Whose image is there? Whose inscription is there? And they said Caesar's. The image was the image of Caesar, because Caesar conferred authority on the economy and stability on the government. But the inscription, what did Caesar write on his coin? Caesar wrote, Caesar Divi Filius. Caesar Filius Divi. Caesar, the son of gods. And Jesus told them, you have to give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. All political and economic power is under him. But remember, there is something that Caesar has no power over: the human being himself, human life. And Caesar himself belongs to some other authority, God. So give back to God what is God's. Before Caesar, during the time of Caesar, after Caesar, until our day, there are still many people in positions of authority and power who think they are gods. O nwere ezinụlọ, ọ bụ ịbata, ọ ga-abụghị nna na ọ bụ nne bụ terror. Some parents, mother, father, or sometimes, unfortunately, even a child may become a terror who constitutes himself or herself over and above every other person in the family. Within the community, well, we have imported in Igbo land what wasn't ours, and there is nothing wrong with that, so long as it helps. Before, Igbo snehengwegeze, Igbo enweze, okwezoku. But now, we find ourselves in a situation where in one state in Igbo land alone, we have over 800 ezes. And that is not enough. We have moved from Igbo enweze to Ezi Igbo na Sokoto. And now Zoya Zo. And at home, we have so fragmented and fractionalized our communities. Nazo, autonomous community, autonomous community. Kedi ha nazo autonomous community? Igwe. Gonna be Igwe. Ela, Juma, Onyis Nobia, Igwebunu. Gonna be Igwe. Ayan Nigbon Sakanayan get crazy. Ayan gas no be zendi mirike. No be Igwendi mirike. Ayan gas no be zendo ihe. No be Igwendi ihe. Or Igwendo banano. Gonna be Igwe. This title was borrowed from the western part of Igbo land. The Obi of Onitsha, the Obi of Asaba, of any of the other communities in the Delta area, just like the Oba of Benin and some other Obas in the West, they believe they are sons of gods, and even that they are gods. Igwe habo, Igwe ka Allah. Onye omuke kwuru ọgụ ya na ebashkuru ojijoko na ego ma ya bụ Igwe ka Allah. Igwe. Otito dịrị Jesu. Ka anyị mara ihe anyị na-eme. And some really of the so-called Igwes and Ezes and kings, Obis and Obas have transformed themselves into miniature gods. And when they move, you must know they are coming. And here around our place, many of them are inventing more and more and more and more paraphernalia. Mgbe mbụ na obodo onye akwamala ekwu oche kpoye goro okponwu okpobe gabụ chief. Nwosha na ekwu oche na okponwu na egezu. Onye hushe mere onye kwa ndị Igwe kweshiri ya bịa ka na mmetemoze ja kwata. Onu ga-ekweshi onye. Ma na-eyiko na hite ale na-eme mmadụ. Apart from that, even political leaders in the so-called democratic dispensations have transformed themselves into gods. And one, they can never be wrong. Two, they must impose themselves and their wills on you. And three, you dare not criticize them. By the way, ana-ekwukwu democracy and dictatorship. You should remember, some of the world's worst modern dictators were democratically elected. So the fact that somebody was elected does not mean he is a Democrat. Let alone a country like ours, where the electoral process has been so compromised that many of those who emerge as leaders lack legitimacy. So you can imagine what we have in our hands. But the king we celebrate today, who is the king of the universe, describes himself as a shepherd. A shepherd who looks after his sheep, who attends to the sick, who attends to the weak, who controls the strong to make sure they don't hurt others. Security, social amenities, protection, leadership. That is the king we celebrate today. He says he will be in the midst of the sheep in order to have a view of all of them, to know who is suffering, to know who is not doing what he is supposed to do. He told in this book, chapter of the prophet Ezekiel, he goes further to say, I will deal with you. Some of you sheep, you trample on the grass and on the water for others, making the pasture dirty and the water undrinkable. I will handle you. That is what a shepherd does. Because he's near, he's watching. I hope you follow me here. You follow me here. That today, when $1 has jumped from 400 and something naira to 1,100 and something naira. And the salaries of workers have remained the same. When one bag of rice has jumped from 20-something thousand to 60-something thousand, when 1 liter, I'm not talking of 1 drum, 1 liter of diesel has jumped from 200 and something naira to 1,000 plus. 1 liter of petrol from 100 and to 600, and our president, you heard him, says he deserves his name to be inscribed in the Guinness Book of Records for the reforms he has carried out. Oga President, take him easy. Take him easy. Don't you think it is too early? Wait now. Maybe you and your experts are already seeing where these reforms will take us to. But we are not seeing it, Oga President. We are not yet seeing it. Take them easy, because it may actually be, underline, may. Mr. President, it may actually be that you will enter the Guinness Book of Records as the president who has transformed the greatest number of Nigerians into beggars in the shortest possible time. You may enter the Guinness Book of Records as the president who has caused the most suffering for the greatest number of Nigerians within the shortest possible time. I'm saying may. We haven't seen the result. But when we see that result, then allow us to propose your name. When Buhari government ended, Nigerians sent around messages, happy survival, after 8 months. And in 6 months, I don't know how many people are surviving. Oga President, take them easy. But he's not alone. Check the life of all those who through a fraudulent process have now imposed themselves on us as leaders. Unfortunately, you find this also among religious leaders of all religions. Some use fear. Others use manipulation. Others use outright lies and intimidation to oppress and extort from the people they are supposed to be overseeing. There are some religious leaders you can't greet standing up because they are God. At least so they think. I want to remind especially Christian religious leaders, the highest position of leadership in the Catholic Church is a bishop. And that is also in every Christian church. The Pope is the Bishop of Rome. Episcopus is from the Greek word for an overseer. You are looking after what does not belong to you, for heaven's sake. That your so-called church, if you are truly a leader and a Christian, is not yours. You are an overseer. And if you are a minister a priest. You are a servant. Steward. Can you know all this pompous carriage? Let us look at the person whom we are celebrating today. King, yes, but shepherd. Shepherd. Looking after his flock. There is also a judge. What will he judge? This feast is terrifying because Jesus is king and his throne is the cross. So if you are deputizing for him, if you are representing him, if you are acting either as a political, economic, social, religious leader on behalf of Christ, what throne are you sitting on? A cross or a throne of gold? And what are you doing as king? He gave himself completely as food. And that is why the Eucharist is the feast of the king. How much of yourself do you give? And that will be the judgment. How much of yourself do you give based on your faith in him whom you represent? And remember, every Christian is baptized and he or she becomes king, prophet, and priest. So because also under Father and the Bishop of Banagwea, every single Christian. If we read the gospel of today, we may think that Jesus is saying, at the end, I will judge you not by how many masses you attended, not by how many rosaries you said, not by how many times, how many societies you belong to, but only how much charity you do. Be careful. Don't reduce this parable to mere philanthropy. Religion is not just mere philanthropy, because some philanthropies are egoists. They're only advertising themselves. Listen to me. Some. True exercise of love is love that derives from faith. Faith in God, to whom belongs everything that you own and is entrusted to you. And faith in the human beings he created, whether you like them or not, they bear the image of God. Therefore, you are good to them. It is an act of faith. That is why charity without integrity has no value. Charity from an impure heart is a mockery of the poor and of God. And it is foul smelling. And that is why, no matter how much you give back to the church or to the society or to the poor from ill-gotten wealth, money you acquired unjustly or illegally or fraudulently, it will not take you to heaven. Because some people think that they can steal public funds and buy themselves a place in heaven in the church. If you bring, we go collect. Take them, do church work for the poor. But that does not assure you any salvation. The same thing, some so-called miracle workers exploit, gather money, milk the poor, collect as many millions as possible, and they give change to poor people, and they are dadio, and they are good men of God. Charity from an impure heart, charity without integrity is a mockery and is foul smelling. It is about faith. That faith makes you realize you don't have the last word. Somebody, some other authority is watching and will judge. That authority reigned from the cross and offered himself for all. And let me ask you a final question. Do you remember that passage in John's Gospel, chapter 6, where the people wanted to catch Christ, Jesus, by force and make him a king? Do you remember that? What did he do? He ran away. Oba. Actually, meyeze. Oba. But he fed them. He gave them food. How come that even after feeding them, solving their immediate material problem, he did not want them to see him as king? The same Christ, the same Jesus, later in his life, mounted a colt and entered Jerusalem as a king. The same Christ was hailed as Hosanna, the son of David. They told the people, the king, the rulers told him, tell them to shut up. He said, I can no longer do that. The same Christ standing before Pilate was asked, are you the king of the Jews? You say it, for this I came into this world. Why did he now accept? He had surrendered himself to be killed. Without that total self-surrender, any post of leadership you occupy is usurped, is wrongly occupied and misused. He is king, but as shepherd, and as shepherd also, and as king, he will judge. And the criteria he will use will be the criteria of his own life as king and shepherd.